we're like kind of looking at all program stuff writing and everything.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Ranger Room. I'm Cade Kennedy alongside Andrew Santangelo, and joining us once again, head coach of the Rangers, Matt Walter. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing all right. Just been game planning all day for getting ready for East Central.
Alrighty, in East Central, of course, the next game up, it'll be Family Day weekend. We do have a 4-game win streak about East Central, so I guess that kind of is a good way to get this started. What do we know about the Tigers?
Well, defensively, they're going to play some man coverage. They're going to try to they're pretty much a 4-man front, and they're going to play ball. Offensively, they're going to run the ball. Run the ball. They got a really good O line. They got good running backs. They're gonna play pretty balanced football on offense. So a little bit different than what we saw last week in terms of offenses and style. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned the running back so far through the season. They're gaining most of their yardage through the ground, and even their touchdowns have mainly come from the rushing game. What is defensively? What do you have to do to kind of stop that rushing game early on? Kind of get momentum.
Definitely be sound in our gaps. Our run fit's got to be sound, and we got to tackle the ball carry, and we do those things, and we think we're going to have some success with that. So that's again when you're playing a team that's ground heavy like that, you just got to make sure you're sounding your fits, and you don't try to you don't get two guys in one gap, and then that leaves an open gap, and can't be gapped out by their formations or gapped out by their reads. So that's important to play discipline and keep in your gap and not try to jump gaps.
Alrighty, and speaking of the run game, that was something that looked very improved against Oklahoma Baptist last week. The Rangers getting 3 rushing touchdowns on the year. What was kind of the change, if you will? Not really saying there was one, of course, but what was the difference in seeing the Rangers be able to score, run the ball, and really just seeing the entire offense improve?
Oh, I'd like to say there was something magical that happened to allow us to play a lot better on offense. I mean part of it you know is just keeping it simple. I think that us coaches, we try to be too smart and think that you can write a lot of stuff on the board, right? And everything you write on the board is going to win. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what your guys can execute, what you can practice, and keeping it simple, stupid, as we were taught back in grade school, and just going out and playing and not and making it where your players don't have to think so much. I think that's all we did. We just simplified things, and our guys were able to go out and execute and perform.
Staying on the Oklahoma Baptist game, obviously three quarters basically kind of even there. Talk about what kind of Oklahoma Baptist was able to do in that second quarter there to get a little bit of separation. Because outside of that, that's the quarter that really showed the difference here in this game in the 56-42. Because, I mean, you kind of trade points there in the third and fourth quarter, and then the first was even. So Oklahoma Baptist 28-14 there in the second quarter. What kind of happened there in the second?
Oh well, they had a special teams breakdown, and they scored on a kickoff return. We had another breakdown in the kicking game that you just hate. They in the fourth quarter this one happened where we're hoping to get another possession back, and they got a fake punt on us. We had an injury late in the third quarter that was one of our key guys on our punt block team, and we didn't communicate it well enough and get the right guys out there, and they took advantage of that. I don't think anything was special about that second quarter in terms of we didn't have any turnovers, so it wasn't a turnover thing. We did the last play of the second quarter. We threw a pick, but that was just hey, you're throwing it to the end zone. Throw it, no matter what, throw it to the end zone. Hopefully, maybe it wasn't a Hail Mary play, but it was a Hail Mary thought process.
Yes.
So, that one was the one turnover in the second quarter, but it didn't result in points. So I think it was just they had stopped us on a possession that they scored on, and that kickoff return. I think those were the two scores that changed. Well, that were the ultimate ending outcome of the game, the differential in the game.
Alrighty, and in terms of kind of talking about the offense. Did we see really any improvement from the defense this week? I know you can kind of look at that and say, oh, we gave up 56 again, but there's always some things you can find to improve there.
Oh, definitely. I think anytime our young, we're so young. We start one senior on defense, multiple freshmen. I think anytime they get out there and they play a player or a team the level of Oklahoma Baptist and Preston Hare, their quarterback, and get those live reps, the better they're going to be in the future, and getting better. From that game to the next game, they're going to be exponentially better, I believe, from playing that game. And then there was one point in the fourth quarter. It was before the fake punt. They're 4th and 1, and they have a penalty, and it would have been 4th and 6, I believe, or it would have been 3rd and 6 if we took the penalty. It was on our plus 40, so they only have 40 yards to go in the score. I knew they were going to go for it. They should have gone for it, and they did. I declined the penalty. I just did. I had a gut feeling that our defense was going to stop them, and they did. And I think that was a growing moment for them. I think it was a great moment for their confidence to stop them on 4th and 1 there, and give us the ball back, give us a chance to go down and score. And I think that defensively, right there, that 4th and goal or 4th and 1, stand there, and then like I said, playing against a player the level of Preston and their whole offense. I mean, the running backs, the receivers, the line, and they're pretty good on offense. They're really good on offense, and I think that playing against a caliber of offense like that will bode well for the future for all those young defensive players.
Especially with the rest of the GACs still ahead, it's always good to be battle tested.
Oh, definitely.
Staying on the defensive unit, talk about senior James Ellis, what he's kind of meant to the team this season. He currently leads the Great American Conference in tackles. I know it's 3 weeks in, and obviously a lot of football left, but obviously a great start to the year for James. Talk about what he's been able to do on the field and off the field for the team.
Oh, James is our warrior. Our one senior starter on defense, and he's definitely the heart and soul, and all the work he's put in all summer. Through the whole COVID year, I know we've talked about we kind of had 3 off seasons there in a row, and he was at the forefront of all those. And what's funny is people don't think he can run. It's just funny to me. Everyone's like, "Oh, I can't believe how fast he is. He caught this guy, caught that guy." You not watch the game, you couldn't run. He may not look like a very svelte guy because he's pretty big, but he definitely can run, and that's a big thing. He can run sideline, he goes makes tackles, and he puts the work in. That's the thing about great players; they put the work in. Of course, he's got all the talent, but the work of the film study, him knowing what's coming in front of him, him knowing what they're going to try to do to neutralize him. He's able to battle that because he knows what's going on, because he does the film study. And we hope our young guys learn from him, because he does do it the right way, and it's showing. Obviously, I wasn't aware he led the league right now in tackles, but that doesn't surprise me about it one bit. So he definitely deserves many accolades and all accolades he gets, and he definitely has worked his butt off for it.
Then speaking of improvement, if you kind of talk about a little bit of the improvement of Tanner Clarkson that we've seen so far this year. I mean, when you throw the ball 53 times, you usually are happy to get 50%, but 36 completions, 413 yards. It looked very impressive.
Yeah, that's about 70%. So he's, I think from game 1 to game 2, he struggled. Part of it was me and what I was doing offensively with him. And like I said, we just simplified things and let him go out there and play, use all his ability, and not try to think so much. And I definitely think that paid dividends for him and our offense, but especially him. So there wasn't so much on his plate, because as long as he's been here, he's been here since 2019. And you're like, okay, he's been here, this is his 3rd year and all that. He's still only played in 5 games. So he's got 5 games of playing time. So each game with him, he's going to see something different. He's going to learn something new. And he's just going to continue to improve on that. By the time you become a 4th-year guy, and you've played in 4 or 3 seasons, whatever it may be, you're going to be much more, long in the tooth, and you'll be able to understand what's going on, and all those things are not so green. And right now, he's still green. is still green because you can't simulate what teams are going to do to you in a game in practice. You just can't do it. So I think that's, like I said, all the talent's there. He really spent a lot of time in the film room, a lot of time with the coaches, understand what we're trying to do offensively this past week. And like I said, we just made things shorter and simpler for him to just play and not think so much.
Yeah, next question I have is, and we already talked about the running game a little bit here today, and I know week one we kind of talked about the offensive line. We saw the 8 sacks or whatever. Talk about, to me it looked like there's been a lot of improvement there on the offensive line. Kind of we've seen for the season 15 sacks, but again 8 of those were the first week, and then we see the improvement on the rushing game. How much is that can contribute from the line, and have we seen a good improvement from the line as I've seen? I thought.
Yeah, again, it goes back to, and I know everybody has their own issues and problems, but for us, just our guys, and I can speak for our guys, that, the O-line's the one cohesive unit that has to work together all the time, all 5 of them. And they just happen to play together. And there's communication that has to happen. There's growth that has to happen there. It's not just one guy can go out there and really be good and help them all out. They all 5 have to be good. They all have to 5 have to be good together. So I think that just getting the game reps together, again, it comes down to experience. The first game, you only had 2 guys that had experience with us play. That's it, the first game. The second game, you only had the same 2, but the rest of them got experience for game 1. And then hopefully, and the same thing with game 3, hopefully game 4 we'll have, another guy back that hadn't played yet, that has been a staple from our O-line, that has a lot of game experience, that just hasn't gotten to play. So I think that, adding him coming off injury will help even more. But again, it's just them playing together, having the experience together. Just because we haven't had that, they haven't had that. So I think that the more we play, the more games we get in, the better we're going to be. And we got to stay healthy. But I think that has definitely been a group that has definitely improved over game 1 to game 2 to game 3.
All right. Do you have anything else to add, Andrew?
I would just say, back-to-back road games. We get to return home here at Ranger Field. Talk about kind of what Family Day is, if it is anything really to you guys and the players there with the weekend, and then talk about what it's going to be like to be back in front of the Ranger Nation.
Well, I mean, Family Day is always awesome because you get to, recognize your family and the sacrifices they've made for you to be here. That's the whole spirit behind it, and I think this, hopefully, a lot of our guys' families are going to be able to come. I know there's a lot that can't come because they're too far away or whatnot, but I think it's great to have them here and recognize them and again, the sacrifice they make to allow these players and these young men to fulfill a dream and to play college sports and have that support behind them from their family. So I think that's always huge. I love Family Day. Also that day we're gonna have we're gonna recognize one of the championship teams. I think it was the 2010 CSFL champion team.
Oh, nice.
Which will be, I believe, recognized that week, or Saturday. So that's gonna be kind of a great, double header there, double punch there. So I'm excited for that and playing in front of home crowd. We needed road experience. So I was welcoming road games, but after these 2, I'm welcoming home.
Right.
I'm excited to come back home, and be able to play in front of our fans and our students, and hopefully, we'll put on a good performance, and they like the product that's out there on the field because you can tell if you watch from game 1 to game 2 to game 3, there's been tremendous improvement. And not just I'm not even talking about the scoreboard. I'm talking about watching the game, just watching it, and that's going to only continue. With, again, these experiences and then getting to come back and play more and more and more, which is, football is the one sport, there's probably others, but the one you really, 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 during the season, you practice 10 times more than you play. And instead of, getting to play a lot and practice in between games, you're practicing the whole time, and then you get to play the one game, and you get to see an exponential improvement usually from game to game, whereas it may be harder in other sports to see that. So hopefully people see that. I know we're seeing it on film, and guys just got to continue to get better.
All righty. Well, once again, September 25th, 6 o'clock, Family Day here at Ranger Field. Should be an absolute fun time, and I'm absolutely looking forward to it.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
No
Thanks, Coach,
problem.
and good luck on Saturday.
Good luck. All right. Coming back after this, we've got a whole lot more to talk about. We got to recap a wild week of college football and, hey, another great week of the NFL. So don't go anywhere. We will be back after this.
Appreciate y'all. No problem. Yep. See you, Cade. Good to see you. Andrew, we'll see y'all guys. Yep. Yep. Hey, do you know where no Preston is one.
Yeah, Preston was
Kid from
one.
Southeastern got to be up there too.
Preston was one. Southeastern's up there, and then Southwestern quarterback.
Really?
Also, Andrew, if you want to make sure your mic's got the logo on that side, we're kind of having some trouble hearing, I guess, on that. Some people were having some trouble hearing.
Week 6. Preston's 1. Griffin, Southwestern 2. Brown, Montrose 3. And Atlas and Southeastern 6.
All right, 15 seconds.
But they didn't update it. They didn't put the week 3 in there. They didn't update it.
Oh, shoot. That's just happened.
I have 5 seconds, by the way, Andrew.
I just heard that.
Week 3. Surely.
No problem. Do it.
All righty, we are back here in the Ranger Room, and like I was telling Andrew right before the break, it's been a wild week of college football, and I mean, I really do not know where to start. You know, most weeks you can kind of think, okay, this is a good place to start, but I really don't know. There were so many storylines, really, that just went on. I mean, you have Alabama and Florida, a close one in the swamp.
That was fun.
That was a very fun game. Oklahoma, Nebraska, which I was at. I have the sunburn to prove it and everything. And then, I mean, Clemson playing Georgia Tech. And, I mean, this was a game not many people watched, mainly because it changed channels 3 different times. But how about Georgia Tech going into Death Valley and didn't look great offensively, but defensively looking very good. Tulsa giving Ohio State everything they could handle for 3 quarters. Auburn, Penn State, of course, the big Saturday night whiteout. UCLA getting upset in another edition of Pac-12 After Dark. I mean, we're not even to the number 15 yet getting upset with Virginia Tech losing to West Virginia, and we still have more stories to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we start with, I want to hear your experience there at the Nebraska-Oklahoma game. Then I found out you were at the game. I mean, I was watching that whole game, and that was a lot of fun to watch. So why don't we start with that?
All right. Well, I am more than happy to go into detail about this because this was a game that was highly anticipated. It got put on the schedule in 2011. You know, Nebraska just left the Big 12. This is a game that a lot of people in Norman and Lincoln had their calendars circled for, a decade waiting for this game. And as an OU fan, you wish Nebraska was still up there so we could relive glory days, talk about, hey, 1971, it was 1 versus 2. Hopefully it'll be a top 15, top 10 matchup. Obviously, Nebraska is not there, but you wouldn't know that if you watched this game. You would think these two, if you remove that number 3 from Oklahoma, you would think these two are evenly matched the way this game went.
Absolutely. It was very well played, and I was really surprised by Nebraska's defense.
I really was too, and I will get into this. I guess being the OU fan, I'll get into this a bit more, but as an Oklahoma fan, this was one of those few games in a long time where I can say, you know what? I am so glad we have the defense that we have. Because I think if this is a game where we have the 2018 defense or the 2017 defense, Oklahoma does not win this game. This is a very different story. But the fact that the defense was able to stand up, and especially those front 7, the front D-line played absolutely incredible. I mean, 5 sacks on Martinez. my opinion, you should have had a few more, but when you get a scrambling quarterback like that, they can be very hard to contain. But, I mean, you have DJ Graham making quite possibly one of the greatest interceptions I've ever seen.
That was amazing.
I mean, I just want to give a big shout out to the atmosphere at that game, too, for being an 11 a.m. kickoff, for being it felt like it was 1,000,000 degrees outside. I'm not going to lie with any of you. It felt hot, and, I mean, most times you can kind of deal with the heat, but it was one of those games where it was just like, oh my goodness, it is hot outside. There were lines everywhere. I was at the game with my dad. He went to get a water, and he was gone the entire second quarter and most of halftime. And he finally came back and said, well, here's your water. It's hot by now, but here's your water.
That's insane. That's crazy. I mean, the crowd on the TV looked crazy, and obviously definitely heard everyone there. And yeah, it looked like a tremendous atmosphere.
Yeah. And I mean, Nebraska deserves a big shout out too. You always hear about how Nebraska fans travel so well, and sitting on the north end where the visitor section usually is, I can confirm there were a lot of Nebraska fans there, and they were very rowdy. This is the loudest I've ever heard it get when OU was on offense. And I've been to the Notre Dame game. I've been when Ohio State came. I've never heard it get that loud for the other team's defense. So, I mean, they deserve a whole lot of credit for showing up.
Good for them, though. That's what's fun about these rivalry games. That's what it creates. It creates an atmosphere for both teams to go out there and kind of enjoy that game. And I think that really does help it be a close game like that.
And there was one moment I specifically want to talk about that no one saw on TV, that this was you only got to see this at the game. There were a few moments, one of which getting to see Bob Stoops walking around with his little plaque of getting into the College Football Hall of Fame. Crowd obviously loving that and everything, getting all the little connections, honoring the people of the game of the century. But the main turning point of the game was the blocked PAT for Oklahoma. It absolutely, to me, there's no doubt about it. You look at that drive and then touchdown afterwards. And after that happened, when it went to commercial, they played one of the songs they usually play during pregame. I've never remembered the name of this song, but I've always heard it. And I've never, usually, by that point, it's 30 minutes before the game, everyone's just kind of funneling in. But everyone was into it. Like, even the older people who were known for, being kind of more quieter and everything, they were getting up and loud. Everyone was into it, which is very weird for Norman. It's usually kind of a split environment where some of the older people are, peacefully watching the game and some of the younger people are more rowdy. But this is one of those few games where everyone was into it, and it felt like it, especially at the end.
That's awesome. That's great. And no, you're right. That extra point, was a big difference. I mean, it looked like Nebraska was going to gain some momentum, but they couldn't even get all the momentum there from the touchdown because of that. Not only a blocked PAT, but they ran it back for the 2 points.
Exactly. But as much as I love to talk about how good Oklahoma's defense played, the unfortunateness is I have to do something it feels like I haven't done since 2014, in that I honestly don't know what is happening on Oklahoma's offense. I honestly have zero idea. It is one of those very weird things. I don't know if I've seen about Rattler sometimes, but I've seen a lot of people turn on him this weekend. He's gone from this guy's going to be pretty good. We just had a bad game against Tulane. We do those every once in a while to, can we please bench Spencer Rattler and throw in Caleb Williams, which I don't think is the right call yet. If this continues, though, oh boy, it's going to get rough. I don't think that's the move now. But one thing that I noticed that someone pointed out to me that I thought about is, with Lincoln Riley, the one play that always seems to get brought up when you watch any OU game, they mention the GT counter, the guard tackle counter, or the guard and tackle both move to block for the running backs. And we haven't seen that really at all this year. We haven't really seen any two running back sets. I was trying to think, how often have I seen Kennedy Brooks and Eric Gray on the same field? And the answer is maybe a play or two. I mean, I understand when you only have two scholarship running backs, you have to pretty much bubble wrap them the second the game ends. But if we're going to do some of these weird looks, Austin Stogner was in the backfield, You're Lincoln Riley. You are one of the better offensive minds in the country, in my opinion. Get creative with it. Let's hand the ball off to a tight end. Let's just see what happens. Let's get fun with this. This is usually the time of the year we see Oklahoma start to kind of go into the bag of tricks. We saw it in the Nebraska game with that one little reverse pass that Rattler got to throw. And I mean, just little fun things like that, new little wrinkles in the offense, I hope get opened up, because I'm going to kind of give my hand for Thursday's predictions. West Virginia is going to be ready. They're going to walk into Norman thinking this is a very winnable game. And if Oklahoma does not step up and play like Oklahoma can, it might be a rough Saturday night in Norman.
Well, and to your point about the two running back thing and not seeing it as much as usual, I think part of that has to go to kind of playing non-conference games. I think you're going to start to see a lot of his traditional stuff when you get there. You see coaches and you hear it sometimes as they save some of that stuff for those conference games just because that they're obviously elevated and have that extra kind of edge to it. So I think you'll start to see the full Lincoln Riley playbook here up in these upcoming weeks, especially as we get into that Big 12 play here this week. As you mentioned, they start with West Virginia. So I think you'll start to see it here in the next few weeks or so.
Well, I hope so, because if this is the same kind, I mean, the run game did look better this week than it has the past 2 weeks. I'm not going to put too much thought into Western Carolina because, I mean, they're not the best FCS team in the world. You know, if it was a North Dakota State or something, I'd be a lot more like, hey, look at this. But, you know, I mean, the Tulane game, I thought Tulane would show how good they were, and Ole Miss was absolutely ready for them. I mean, that game was delayed for 2 hours. I thought, okay, this is where Tulane's going to do it. They have a rain delay. They have all the time in the world to think about this. And Ole Miss just absolutely dropped a dime on them, it felt like. They didn't get to 100, but boy, it sure felt like they were going to get there in that one. But another game I really want to talk about, and this is one I did not expect to be talking about as much, but Alabama finally shows a weakness this year. They were the only team in college football, I would say, that looked untouchable those first 2 weeks. Blowing out Miami and blowing out Mercer, which you expect from the Mercer game, but from Miami, you didn't expect it as much. And it looked like they were going to do the same thing. You go into the swamp, you're playing Florida, you're up 21-3. It looks like it's going to be another walk in the park type of game. And I mean, my goodness, Alabama just getting punched in the mouth and then punched again and again. And I mean, Florida, it was just simple stuff. It was just running right at them. And it was honestly one of the more impressive things I've seen the Gators be able to do. And I mean, this happened last year too in the SEC title game. But if you're Alabama, giving up 29 points, it sounds like, oh, wow, only 29 points. But to Alabama, that's like criminal.
Yeah. No, 29 to Alabama is basically like giving up like 50 for everybody else. No, this was a good game. It's a shame that the Gators got off to such a slow start in this game. Alabama was to jump out early, 21-3 in the opening quarter. I think that's what really, really made the difference in this game, because outside of that first quarter, I think you could argue the Florida played better in every other quarter. I really believe that. I think what they were able to do, as you mentioned, they were able to run the ball pretty much with ease whenever they wanted to. I think that helped them control the clock. So if you take out the start of that game for the Gators, I really think they outplayed Alabama. And obviously you can't take out that quarter, but I'm just saying, to your point about the weakness there from Alabama, I think top to bottom, the Gators are right with them, and we'll see kind of how it shakes up the rest of that SEC.
And then, I mean, Florida, most teams you can't get away with a moral victory. You know, a lot of teams aren't fans. But if you're a Florida fan, you have to think we are one very weird 2-point conversion play away from tying this game with only a few minutes left. And, I mean, I think that 2-point conversion play they ran, I think it was a good play call, because it's a little-known trick that if you're able to do kind of that veer like they did where both players hold on to the ball, no one is technically allowed to touch you. If they do, it's technically defensive holding, I believe. But they kind of just misplayed it because the hole was there. If you go back on the replay, there's a big gaping hole to run through, and they just made the wrong read at the absolutely wrong time.
Yeah. No, and I think, again, it goes to show there the fight in in Florida and what they're able
Yeah.
to do, and it helps that obviously it was at their place and they had the crowd. I think from their standpoint, you want to see a little bit more. I mean, you look at the numbers and he goes 18 for 28, which isn't bad, but obviously he only threw for 195 yards. You probably want to see a little bit more there. He had the interception early on in the game, but I think that's kind of where you see that, and I think again. Alabama had 21 points in that opening quarter, finished with 31. So that's just an incredible adjustment there. Like, is it fair to say that Nick Saban got out coached there in game wise, and
I know.
you never hear that. Like
No.
that's unheard of.
This is one of those few games where, it, like mentioned a moment ago, we've now seen everyone has a weakness. This is one of those few years in college football where everyone has looked beatable now for at least one game. For some teams, 2 games. For some teams, they've looked beatable the entire year and haven't lost yet. That certain someone we'll get to in a little bit, but
That's a game like this has me excited for. I mean, you talk about seeing some weakness there and everything, but how about this gets you ready for that Texas A&M game we talked about
oh yeah,
last week a little bit. And that game, that's going to be October 9th, so that's coming up here in a few weeks. I mean, it's going to be exciting to see, and then obviously we'll see what happens if everything shakes out the way expected.
yeah.
They're not going to play Georgia there until the SEC championship game, and that's obviously going to be a very exciting game as well. So
This kind of sets up the prospect of how about Georgia Florida now? That game
Yeah.
suddenly gets a whole lot more interesting. A&M Arkansas. I mean that who had A&M Arkansas on your list of must-watch television for week 4?
no,
But sure enough, it's going to be on there.
it's gonna be great. And I don't know if you saw the rankings for this week. I'm trying to pull them up fully here, but I'm interested to see a loss like that to Alabama, how that and that's that. See, they respect the way Florida played against Alabama and everything, so they stayed at 11 this week. So that kind of shows you there what you get in that when you lose that kind of game there. So now you have them right there with Ohio State 2-1, Clemson 2-1 there at 9, 10, 11. So we'll see what we get there.
Exactly. And I think kind of diverging onto the AP rankings here, I think they've done a pretty good job this week. I mean, seeing Clemson at 9 and Ohio State at 10 definitely is weird to me. Having 2 Big Ten teams above Ohio State.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, rightfully so. It's just very odd to see after, what feels like forever Ohio State has dominated that conference. It hasn't been that way. It just kind of feels like it.
And honestly, and I'm interested to see and what your take is. The one thing I was surprised with, and I get they lost the first week of the year, but I was a little surprised there that they didn't put West Virginia in the rankings after a big win like that, especially when they're going into Oklahoma this week. You think that's a game they try to escalate a little bit. So I'm surprised a little bit. I know Maryland isn't the best team. That's who West Virginia lost to in week 1, 30-24. But I was a little bit surprised you didn't see West Virginia back at the back end, like 24, 25-ish there in the rankings.
Well, I think the thing that they're going to try to do is this is always kind of the most fun, one of the more fun parts is predicting the predictors' predictions. But with Kansas State being at 25, I mean, if they had still had a healthy Skylar Thompson, that makes perfect sense. K-State's a top 25 team. But with Will Howard in at quarterback, yes, you beat Nevada, but that really was a tight game for 3 quarters. Yes. And I mean, you go to Stillwater, 6 o'clock at night. I don't know why that game's on ESPN Plus. That's a disgrace that game's on ESPN Plus.
I didn't realize it was just on ESPN Plus.
Yeah, exactly. They're doing such a good job at hiding it, you wouldn't even realize it. It'll be a 6. So both games being night games in the state of Oklahoma for the big teams with OU and OSU. But I think the plan is to have Oklahoma State ready to leapfrog up there if they beat K-State, because then they can they've beaten a top 25 team. They have the credentials. They would be 4-0. And we'll get to Oklahoma State later with their game with Boise State. That was a game. I'll just put it like that.
Well, that kind of leads me to my next point, too, is I was surprised there that they didn't move OSU up. Not high, but you could have made it a 24-25 ranked game just to get some extra people to watch that or kind of something like that, because you had UCLA lose to Fresno State this weekend, and that's a team with how shaky that UCLA has been, or not shaky, but like you know what I'm trying to say there with a
Yeah.
tough loss, bad loss like that. I am surprised you didn't have a 3-0 Oklahoma State against the 3-0 Kansas State this week and just advertise it as the 24-25. Not that that's a big
Yeah.
game, but I'm surprised they didn't roll with that.
But I think the thing they're trying to do there is Fresno State's good. That's the thing is UCLA kind of got bailed out in a way that Oregon nearly lost to Fresno State, and that they can pull the, oh, well, Fresno State's just a really good team. And I mean, if you have not looked up the ending of that game, that is an absolute classic ending. I mean, Fresno State's quarterback, Heiner, I believe is his last name, or Honor, he's out there with about half a good body. He's out there clutching at his, I mean, just clutching in obvious pain. He thinks he's put the game away. UCLA flies right back down the field, and he goes, puts the team on his back, and he just balled out. It was so fun to watch. Obviously, I didn't watch it live. I was asleep. I was a tired boy after, you know.
I'm sure you were. Those
Yeah,
games, as fun as they are, they wear you out like
no,
crazy.
it was one of those. I can't remember losing my voice in an OU game in a while, but there were like I was drained emotionally and physically by halftime, and it was only 7-3. You know, I'm thinking, oh god, we got another half of this. But it was such a fun time. That was kind of, I think that's the earliest I've ever tapped out on a college football weekend. I mean, which just gives credit to how fun of a game that was. Even if it was infuriating at times, well, most games are. If you root for any specific team, you're gonna have infuriating days.
Oh, no question at all.
But speaking of probably not as infuriating with one of your teams, we're going to kind of take a little trip down the rankings and then go back up because I want to hit this game. Auburn and Penn State. I mean, from what I saw before I crashed, I'm going to keep hitting that because it was just weird to me. 9 o'clock going to sleep was weird. But this was such a fun game to watch. Auburn and Penn State going back and forth really the entire game. And then the Nittany Lions doing what they seem to do this year. Get out of there, get a win, and still look very good.
Oh yeah, without question. I think what this game shows again is how good their defense really is. You saw that in week 1. Obviously a lesser opponent week 2 there. And then you come out here against an SEC opponent, which I was watching game day there before all the games kicked off, and I think, if I heard right, I think that was the first time they beat an SEC opponent since like 2012, which is insane for how credible Penn State has been here in recent years. And I'm sure they probably don't play SEC opponents too often, so I know the stats probably a little bit skewed. But to me, that was just a crazy thing to hear there, and I get it. Auburn isn't the top notch for the SEC, but they're still a very good team, and I think you mentioned they battled back and forth in that first half there, and then what looked like a drive Auburn was going to have and try to score. What a goal line stand. I don't know if you saw any highlights or anything, but a tremendous goal line stand there at the end of the game to keep Auburn out of the end zone and hold on for that 8-point victory.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was just from what I was able to see, it was a really great game. And kind of to your point, how many times do we see an SEC team go up north? Not very often. So I'm all in favor of these kind of southern teams going up north and northern teams coming down south. Obviously, if you're a Big Ten team, you're used to it. You know, you go to your Florida Bowl game or whatever it is or something like that. But I'm in favor of stuff like this. I think this is always really fun to see. And, I mean, we need more games like this. We really do. I'm glad we're getting more and more of it, especially with that alliance that's been proposed. We'll see more fun games like this. But this was just an absolutely incredible game for most people in their college football night. But as we'll get to, Pac-12 After Dark kicked itself into extra gear.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I think you hit it right on the nose there. And it's tough to. I'm surprised there haven't been this, but you're right. These recent trends, we're starting to see a lot more of these kind of games here. Top-notch games. I mean, you saw Ohio State. They tested themselves with the Oklahoma game a few years ago now. You obviously have this game we just talked about. You had Ohio State and Oregon. And what was the week 1 game? I mean, it was on paper, Alabama, Miami. Obviously.
Yeah, Clemson, Georgia.
Yeah, so
Washington, Michigan, which could have been a big game if Washington didn't go ahead and lose to Montana, but
Yeah. So
that's
yeah,
a
you are
still
seeing a lot of teams start to test themselves a lot more, and it's a lot of fun to watch as fans. And I honestly do think, and obviously I'm not a coach, so there's no way for me to actually know, but I think it honestly does help the players get ready for conference as well, rather than just playing three FCS schools or two
yeah.
FCS schools
I
and
mean,
another lesser D1 or whatever.
exactly. Now, kind of jumping back up to the top of the top 25, Georgia looked about like how you'd expect from Georgia. They beat South Carolina 40-13. This is a game I didn't really keep a big eye on because by about the time it was 14-3, you kind of got the feeling how this game was going to go. Georgia's going to do what they do. Their defense is going to look good. South Carolina's going to struggle. That's about how this game went.
Absolutely, and credit to Georgia not overlooking them or anything. You start conference play there, and you're ready for it. You just get out of the gate, open up a big lead, and don't let it go. We've talked about through the first 3 weeks how many times about teams getting out to that lead and letting teams back into games. And this is something you didn't see here from Georgia. Is they just went out, did their business, got the win, and I'm sure they'll be ready for whoever they got in week 4. But I'll tell you what, I think through 3 weeks, obviously things can change. I think Georgia looks like the best SEC team, and yes, I think they look better than Alabama right now.
All righty. Well, there we go. Now we're getting to the bowl. This is what I always love about this season, this part of the year, is now that we have a few games under our belt, we really can kind of figure out who's good, who's not as good as we thought. And another one that stood out to me, and I mentioned it earlier, was Clemson and Georgia Tech. I don't know if you saw the ending to this game, but Clemson nearly did everything in their way to lose this game at the end. It's just to kind of give a recap. Clemson scores, makes it 7-0 in the first quarter, and then it's 7-0, 30 seconds to go until halftime, and we enter a 2-hour rain delay. And so it completely throws everything off. Georgia Tech comes out, kicks a field goal. We officially go to halftime. I think they had like a 5-minute halftime. And this just turned into a slugfest. Neither team could get any offensive rhythm going. Georgia Tech is a new quarterback in. I mean, Jordan Yates has to come into the game. DJ Uiagalelei not really looking that good. It looked like he was playing Georgia again. But Will Shipley ended up being the hero of the day for Clemson, getting the 2 rushing touchdowns. And Georgia Tech gets down 14-3, 8 minutes to go in the game, and proceeds to go on a 7-minute drive only to kick a field goal. The whole theory was, we're going to do this. And then they proceed to pull off quite possibly one of the greatest onside kicks I've ever seen.
Yes.
Pat McAfee would be very proud. It was very, as he would say, it's for the brand of kickers. And this was just one of those shocking blows that a minute left, Georgia Tech has the ball at midfield. Clemson immediately commits a roughing the passer penalty. Georgia Tech gets down to the 2-yard line and throws a shovel pass on, like, their play calling in the red zone was some of the most confusing play calling out. You have a dual threat quarterback, run like a read option or something. You have 3 timeouts and 30 seconds, and you try to throw the ball, run the ball finally once, and then throw the ball again. I do not understand. It's 2 yards. Just kind of try to sneak your way in once or twice. I understand not doing it all 4 times, but I was expecting a little bit more creativeness, run some trick play, run a Philly special maybe even or something.
No, I agree with you. I think you're starting to see Clemson not panic, but I think they're getting concerned with themselves, and I think you kind of saw that with a very conservative calls there and everything throughout this game. And I mean, I understand the delay and everything, but my takeaway here from Clemson is obviously you don't have to hit the panic button, but I think there is a lot of concern for this Clemson team here on the offensive part of the ball. Obviously, the defense played well against Georgia. Defense played well in this game, but I mean, when have you you haven't seen anything really from the Clemson offense so far,
No,
and now you're traveling to NC State, which it's a team you should be able to take care of, but a road game there with kind of the way your offense has struggled. My eyes are kind of open on that game, not for an upset, but I kind of want to see how Clemson plays in that game is why my eyes are on that
Yeah.
game. I think they'll take care of business and probably still win by double digits, and I'm sure the spread's that way too. But my point is, I think their offense has been that alarming where you haven't seen their passing game like it usually is. And even the rushing game, I mean, it was a better there a little bit, and they were able to control the clock and everything. But I'm very interested to see the response here next Saturday.
Yeah, and I think another thing to point out is that Georgia Tech outgained Clemson, 309 to 284. I mean, this is something we're not used to seeing. And to kind of finish up the recap here, so after Georgia Tech does not get it, Clemson trying to run the ball out of the end zone in the shotgun formation. Keep in mind they're at their own 2-yard line. They fumble the ball, and their own player falls on it. If that ball falls the other way, there are 3 Georgia Tech defenders right there. And from one replay angle I saw, I was just kind of like shocked. I thought Georgia Tech fell on it for a moment. I was like, is Clemson really about to let this happen? This felt like, if you remember Clemsoning from the old days of, 2012 getting destroyed by West Virginia in the Orange Bowl. It felt like, is this finally happening again? Is Clemson finally getting their comeuppance after running the ACC? But it ended up only being a safety. But Georgia Tech getting 3 possessions in the final minute 30 was definitely not something I had on my card for this week.
No, not at all. And that's something Clemson's got to clean up. But it's a shame Georgia Tech couldn't pull that game out because their defense did everything they can to win this game. And, I mean, against a good Clemson team, their offense came up a little bit short in the Yellow Jackets. But it's probably a good learning curve there for them. And we'll see what happens. I feel like Georgia Tech always finds a way to play Clemson close.
They always do, even though they didn't have the triple option to help them this time. Paul Johnson's not walking through that door. But it will be very interesting to see how Georgia Tech does the rest of the year. You lost to Northern Illinois to start the year in a very disappointing game. And now you play Clemson very close. So Georgia Tech is kind of one of those teams. I have no idea what they've got. They're kind of showing me different looks. I don't know how to feel about them. I don't think they'll be that great. They're still trying to rebuild, into just kind of rebuilding into something. I don't even know what they're trying to do. I mean, you've got the whole Atlanta rebrand they're doing and everything, which is cool to see, but at some point you're going to have to get results.
Absolutely. And that's something I'm sure Georgia Tech fans are wanting to start to see results. And you mentioned that the bad loss in week 1, but I think this is something you can step in the right direction.
I think so. But speaking of results, Cincinnati's got results. They go to Bloomington, and they did everything they had to win this game. Now, they got down 14-0 in the second quarter. It looked like, oh, boy, here's that traditional trap game. Kind of weird thinking of Indiana as a trap game after all of what happened last year, but Cincinnati, give them credit. They battle their way back. They take the lead in the fourth, and they hold on to it. So Cincinnati, I mean, are they legit? Really is the question, and I think more and more they're looking legitimate.
Well, we'll get that answer here in a week when we talk on Monday, recapping next week. We'll find out if this team's legit. I don't know if they got the big game against Notre Dame this weekend at Notre Dame.
Well, I thought Notre Dame Wisconsin was this week. I think Notre Dame. Let me actually check.
No, okay. So Cincinnati's got a bye. It is Cincinnati's next game.
Okay,
but
Cincinnati's
Cincinnati
next
has a
game.
surprising week 4 bye week 4
that
bye.
is a
So
pretty
that's
early
pretty early
bye.
bye.
That's a
But-
good bye though to have right before Notre
That is,
Dame.
especially since Notre Dame's gonna get banged up a little bit against a good Wisconsin team.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll see what Cincinnati is able to do against Notre Dame. I'm looking forward to watching that game. That's 2 big games there on October 2nd already. We talked about
I
Texas
know.
A&M and Alabama, and now we got the Cincinnati Notre Dame
Yeah,
game.
that's
So that'll be a
setting
fun
up-
weekend.
That's setting up to be a superstar weekend. But speaking of stars that no one really expected to see, how about Tulsa?
Yeah,
I
it's
mean, this was a game that, a lot of, if you're an Oklahoma State fan, I nearly said OSU, but that can mean 2 different teams.
right. 3 actually, to count Oregon State.
That's true. Or you
Um,
can count 2, the orange and black OSU.
Yeah,
No,
right.
the other one.
But no, I thought it's a shame Ohio State kind of got those late couple scores to make it look like a blowout, but Tulsa played them very well for the most part. Obviously couldn't get too much going on on the offensive part of the ball. But they controlled the game. They kept it close, and there was at one point, I forget, it was like a 7 or 8 point game. It was one possession, and Tulsa picks off Ohio State, and they take it back to around the 50. And I thought that was a chance there to tie it, but then Ohio State's defense came up big with a stop.
Yeah.
But no, Tulsa playing two good teams there back to back, and especially with the travel, they're not either one at home for Tulsa. They got go on the road to two Power 5 conferences in Oklahoma State and Ohio State, but they're able to play both teams pretty close. So things could be starting there for Tulsa maybe next year or something if they keep this group together.
I think so, but I think the other thing to look at is there were a few takeaways I had from this game. Number one was this is an Ohio State fan base that I saw a lot of dejection from them. I mean, there was a time where it was 27-20. Tulsa scores early fourth quarter, and Ohio State goes 3-and-out. And they were showing some camera shots of the crowd. And if you would have saw their reactions, you would have thought they were losing to Michigan by 35. You know, it looked like the world was falling for them. And it was, as an Oklahoma fan, it was kind of funny because it's like, oh, we have one of these games every year. Welcome to our world.
Yeah, it's not something you see from Ohio State, and I think the voters and the rankings are definitely taking note. As you already mentioned, two Big Ten teams above them now. I think Ohio State actually dropped after
they
this
did.
win.
They fell from 9 to 10.
10. So again, people are taking note of this, and Ohio State's kind of putting themselves in a little bit of a hole here early on. Again, two Big Ten teams in front of them. I know it's looking way in advance to that top four, but two schools ahead of them in their conference and a tough game here. This is points off there when it comes down to that voting process, as you already just saw with the rankings. So,
and another thing that I was kind of weird looking at this game was Ohio State's crowd was something of note because for a stadium that seats almost 103,000, only 76,000 people there. I mean, it was only 74% attendance, which is shocking for an Ohio State game. You think of that as a place that sells out very regularly, but I mean, I saw a lot of people like, hey, whoa, this is a bit of a shock, but a lot of people don't want to, watch these games in person, and it was a brutally hot day in Columbus. It was 90 degrees for them, which in Ohio, you're not used to 90 degrees.
Not at this time of the year.
Yeah, for us that's a bit more normal, but that was something of note to me that I just saw and was kind of like, whoa, that's a lot of empty seats at the top. I mean, you just don't see that often.
No, not at all. It was surprising.
But speaking of surprises, Purdue and Notre Dame. Notre Dame actually won a game by more than 3 points. That's the real surprise. But this was a game that went about how I expected. Purdue just does what they always seem to do against Notre Dame. They go up, walk up, hit them square in the mouth. Let's see how Notre Dame responds. And to their credit, they didn't act like they were playing Toledo. They didn't act like they were playing Florida State. They treated this like a real game, started marching down the field on them. Purdue gave them a few blows. But at the end of the day, Notre Dame was able to put this away.
No, absolutely. I think this is a good win for Notre Dame. We already talked about their struggles early on. And, Purdue comes out, gets the first points of the game. They have a couple chances to move down the field, but Notre Dame's defense really stopped them. Didn't allow anything really to happen. Held them to the 2 field goals and was able to get out to that 17-6 lead and kind of control it. Purdue tried to make that comeback, but Notre Dame in the fourth quarter was able to just take care of business. So good overall win here for the Fighting Irish. And we just talked about what they got ahead of them, 2 big-time opponents. So we'll see what they're able to do.
Yeah.
And we'll see what we're saying about Notre Dame in a few weeks.
Yeah, so these next 2 weeks we'll really learn a lot about Notre Dame. I mean, everyone's kind of got that implication of, oh, this is a team that's just going to kind of fly through their schedule. They're going to get some rocky games, and they're just going to kind of somehow keep on winning. Feels like something Notre Dame does every year, but I mean, the other thing was, once again, Purdue outgained Notre Dame. They had 2 turnovers, one of which I believe in the final 5 minutes, Purdue goes down and throws a pick in the end zone, trying to get it back to 1 possession. And I mean, Notre Dame just did everything they had to do. I was not impressed with Jack Cohn, but I mean, only going 15 for 30, that's really not what you're looking for at a blue blood school like Notre Dame. But I understand he's not much of a throwing guy when you come from Wisconsin and you can run the ball 40 times. But it was very interesting to see because I'm still not really sold on Notre Dame, but this was definitely a good win for them.
No, without question. If they're able to win their next two, we'll be talking about them
Yeah,
maybe
I'll
as a
be
top
talking
four
a
team.
lot differently about Notre Dame.
It's all about who you got.
But speaking of who you got, if you're Fresno State, you got a guy that can win you games, and his name, you need to remember this name, folks. It's Jake Hayner. This guy just, what can you say about Jake Hayner? I mean, he comes in here to the Rose Bowl, taking on number 13 UCLA, a guy who knows he can get the job done, throws for 455 yards. And he's gimping around towards the end of the game. He is clearly in pain, but he still gets the job done with 14 seconds left to pull off a stunning upset in an absolutely fantastic game that no one saw.
No, without question. And we saw them play Oregon close, right? In
Yes.
the first week, I think it was. And we started talking about, like, was that a bad game for Oregon? Is this Fresno State team? Can this be a good? And now they go to UCLA and find a way to win that game by 3 there. And I think, and we saw the rankings give them that ranking there after a close game. And it's a great win for Fresno State. You mentioned it. Their quarterback's for real, and we'll see where he's able to take them kind of throughout this year and what he's able to do. But no, this is a very solid win here for Fresno State, and we'll see. See, a school like this is where I really get interested because are they going to kind of be, how are they going to go into next week? Are they going to be still overwhelmed from that great victory, and are we going to see like a bad game from them, or are they going to bounce back, get ready for that game, and are they going to be able to take care of business?
Exactly. The Mountain West is not an easy conference. You can never write out those group of fives, but Boise State, Fresno State, Wyoming, you really don't know who's going to come out of that conference. But just to kind of give some stats from this game, because Fresno State really impressed me. They had 40 minutes of time of possession. They dominated the time of possession. 569 yards for Fresno compared to 395 for UCLA. They did have 3 turnovers, but were able to force 2. But, I mean, if you looked at the stats, this felt like a game they dominated. They didn't because, I mean, that's just to show how good UCLA's offense can be. Give them 19 minutes and 40 seconds, and they can still put up 37.
Yeah, without question. And this was disappointing to see from UCLA. I was really hoping, we were talking about them, big win over LSU, nice win against, I think it was Hawaii to start the year. And I was hoping this team would want to have one of these kind of games, and they'd really go into the Pac-12 play with a undefeated record still, and still kind of building that momentum. So we'll see how UCLA responds, but good win for Fresno State, and shocking win too.
Now, another upset game, West Virginia getting the Black Diamond Trophy back with a 27-21 win over Virginia Tech. This was one that I kind of expected West Virginia to win this game. I wasn't completely sold on Virginia Tech. I believe their defense is very good, but their offense was just kind of the question to me. Letty Brown doing exactly what he needed to do. 19 carries, 161 yards on a TD on the first drive of the game for the Mountaineers. He did absolutely everything he needed to do. Daggy looked good, the quarterback for the Mountaineers. And, I mean, if you're West Virginia, yes, it was a little shaky at the end. You nearly let Virginia Tech come back. But overall, very solid performance by West Virginia.
No, without question. This is the game we both talked about last week that we saw. We thought West Virginia would come out and win this game. And I think it's a great win for West Virginia. Obviously, I already mentioned on the show, I was surprised they weren't ranked, but they had that tough game against Maryland to start the year. So this is a really good, much needed win there for the Mountaineers, especially going right into Big 12 play against a great team. This is a confidence booster for West Virginia, and something I'm sure they'll build momentum off of going into this upcoming week. But no, they controlled this game really. And you mentioned it. Virginia Tech tried to make a late push there, but really West Virginia had this game under control. I mean, they go up 27-7, and tremendous job by the Mountaineers at home, take care of business, and don't allow anything to happen.
And then another late night fun one, Arizona State and BYU. BYU is just on their way to trying to win the Pac-12 South this year, I guess. This is the third straight opponent they've played from that division, and I mean, it's just absolutely fun to see. BYU's look just from what I've seen from them, they look just like such a fun team to watch this year. I mean, they've got the defense, they have an offense. I wasn't really sold on Arizona State though this year. I mean, you'd have heard a little bit of hype around them. Hey, this is such a good team. Look at what they can do, but 4 turnovers. I mean, I saw there was one crazy play where BYU throws an interception, and then Arizona State fumbles the return, and BYU gets it back.
Yeah, without question, this is a good win for BYU, and BYU is a team that's never really talked about, but a team that always plays well every year. And I think this is a solid win for them. I'm with you. There's a lot of talk with Arizona State, but I really haven't seen it with them. Arizona State's had a lot of talk around them since they've signed Herm Edwards. I think that kind of goes with the name going to that program. I think that's what kind of happens. You get that kind of coach, and he's able to really get the awareness and the name towards that school. And obviously, rightfully so, a big name there and a big hire. But I don't think he's been able to do as much as Arizona State fans have wanted so far. And I mean, obviously, this is a game you really hope they come out and win if you're a Sun Devils fan. And we'll see how they respond. But like you said, the 4 turnovers is where I was disappointed with this Arizona State team.
And then another upset that we kind of talked about, this could be an upset, and it ended up being it, was Michigan State not only winning, but just taking it to Miami. 38-17, Michigan State just doing exactly what you kind of expected them to do. They came in, they established their will, they were able to just start pounding the ball on Miami. Made some great defensive plays. Miami with 2 turnovers. And, I mean, this was just – it looked like a typical Michigan State team. It looked like kind of those classic early 2010 Michigan State teams that just come in, take care of business, get out of there, look very solid.
No, without question. I think this answers all of our questions about Miami. I mean, I think we talked about
I think we can –
was that a good Alabama team or was this a bad Miami team? But this loss here, if you would have lost at 38-35 or whatever, we could talk about how good of a game it was. But no, you mentioned it. Michigan State completely blew them out, took care of business. And, I mean, I'm sure everyone down there in Miami are pretty upset at meeting the fans there because – I mean, listen, it's a storied university there with a football program that's usually been pretty good. So you know the fan base out there is pretty upset.
And then I kind of just jumping back with the top 25, the big games of the top 25 out of the way. Let's just get to Oklahoma State and Boise State because this was a game that I was watching early and was kind of like, okay, Boise State's looking pretty good. So I kind of start flipping back to other games. I kind of forget about this one. I check back. Boise's up 20-7. I think, okay, this is going about how I thought it would. And then I wake up to an Oklahoma State win and a notification of a very controversial play late in the game. Boise State getting robbed of a touchdown. And then they get the ball, but it was kind of treated as an inadvertent whistle. They miss a field goal. And, I mean, this is nothing against Oklahoma State. You can't control what the officials do. But, I mean, once again, the Cowboys get pretty lucky, but you got to have luck to win.
Yeah, no, without question. And, again, bad offense here from Oklahoma State. They did enough to get the win. Started in a little bit of a hole, but, I mean, this is something you're not used to seeing. But the defense on this Oklahoma State team is carrying the team. I mean, I don't know when the last time really you're able to say that, especially in the Mike Gundy era. I mean, he's built tremendous offense, and that's what we're used to seeing is the fast-paced Mason Rudolph type offense. James Washington. I mean, you mentioned all the star offensive players on this team, but I mean, if you look at it, they struggled against Tulsa. They struggled against Missouri State. They struggled in this Boise State
Aflac
game,
policyholders have been paid $37 billion
road win for Oklahoma State here because I read somewhere Boise State's home numbers are just insane. So
yeah,
you go on the road there on that blue field and find a way to win. And yeah, there's some ref issues, but I mean there was a really bad roughing the passer call against Oklahoma State there that extended the drive as well. So
yeah, not to say like the refs were out against either team. That's just kind of typical Big 12 Mountain West reffing.
Things go both ways. So, but no, I think this is a good win here for OSU on the road because I know honestly this was a game I was kind of leaning towards thinking it'd be a little bit of a loss here. just because of that road atmosphere. But this is a win you need going into conference play. And I talked about it already on the shows, getting that win, getting confidence in there. Now you go against a ranked team. So this is a win OSU really needed.
Yeah, and I mean, apologies for the little audio hiccup we had there. I don't know why that happens sometimes, but one thing I was very impressed to see from Oklahoma State was the run game. Finally seeing Oklahoma State come to life and be able to run the ball after what it felt like 2 straight games of not cracking 80, it felt
Yeah.
like. And then being able to finally do that and stifle Boise State and just really prevent them from doing a whole lot. I mean, nothing happened in the second half, which was really weird to see, seeing 2 zeros on the board.
No, absolutely, and especially with OSU and Boise State, because Boise State can put up some points too. So, again, to see the way both defenses came out, not allowing anything to happen on that offensive end was pretty crazy to see there.
And then the final game that has to be talked about, just because it was such a historic event that not many people knew probably even happened. Northern Arizona, for the first time since 1932, defeats Arizona 21-19 in an absolute historic win for the Lumberjacks. Anytime you got a name like the Lumberjacks, you got to mention them. This is their first win of the season. Arizona is 0-3. I mean, what even is going on at Arizona? You know, we all kind of were talking about what in the world happened with Washington. What in the world is happening with Arizona? I mean, this is just kind of unacceptable for them.
No, yeah, I mean, I feel like we've been talking about one of these games each week so far. So funny or great to see another one. I think it's good for the sport.
I think
another good upset there, and that had to be a really good atmosphere there for Northern Arizona there to pull off that win. And I honestly missed this, so I didn't even see that Arizona lost this game here.
Yeah.
To Northern Arizona, but no, this is definitely a wake up call. I really feel like Arizona, we haven't seen a good Arizona team in a little bit. We've seen a little bit on the basketball end, but I feel like their football team has really struggled these last few years.
Exactly, and this is just one of those games that, you know, I woke up to and saw, that can't be right. That's got to be a typo. Oh, that's pretty funny. They confused Northern Arizona and Arizona. What do you mean Arizona lost?
Yeah.
That's not they're not allowed to lose games like this, you know? But, I mean, all credit to Northern Arizona. You get down 13-0. It looks like one of those games where, oh, man, here we go again. But they fought back. They took the lead midway through the third quarter. Then they score again. I mean, how often do you see that where an FCS team is just kind of able to impose their will on an FBS team, you know? And then Arizona, the late score, they go for 2. They have to tie the game, and they don't get it.
Now, that's one you got to get is the 2-point conversion, especially with you being the more superior team there.
Exactly. Now, kind of just giving a little preview, not to get too much into it. That'll be our Thursday show. But of all the games next week in college football, which games stand out to you the most? I know we talked about Notre Dame, Wisconsin, the big noon kickoff, 11 a.m. on Fox. That'll be a big one. We mentioned Texas A&M and Arkansas at 2:30. But what are some other games that stand out to you as I kind of go through the list here?
Yeah, I think those two are definitely the main ones that stand out. I'd have to put Oklahoma State, Kansas State on there because, again, I think that could have been 2 ranked teams. I think that would be a really good battle. Kansas State obviously has their backup quarterbacks. I think it will be another defensive battle there. We already talked about West Virginia, Oklahoma. I'd put that on the map as a watch. And then Georgia Tech, I think that's another sleeper game there. Is you don't think much of Georgia Tech, but you just played Clemson pretty close. Now you go a home game against North Carolina, against a ranked North Carolina team. So that's a game I think is under the radar, but a game I think you need to keep your eyes on is North Carolina, Georgia Tech.
See, I'm going to say a game that people need to keep an eye on because this might get fun. Rutgers and Michigan. This is a game that most people aren't going to pay attention to. They're going to say, 2:30, Michigan's going to roll them. Rutgers is 3-0, people. This is not a drill. This is not a joke. Rutgers is 3-0, and they looked pretty good last year against Michigan. So, I mean, this is one of those games that, hey, something might just happen. I think another few good ones to watch. Iowa State coming to Waco. Dave Aranda always seems to have his team ready for these types of big games, no matter where he's at. And I think Iowa State, who's still they finally got a blowout win against UNLV. But now you get conference play. Baylor already has a win in their pocket in the Big 12, beating Kansas last week. This will be, I think, a very fun test for both teams, really. And then kind of to mention one we talked about earlier, Clemson coming to NC State. Carter Finley Stadium has been the house of horrors for so many teams, it feels like, specifically Florida State and Clemson. It's a rivalry game. You got the Textile Bowl. Raleigh will be absolutely rowdy for this one.
Absolutely, this is a game they need to take too. I think, and we've talked about them so much so far. But no, I think it's gonna be another great weekend of games here in college football, and conference play is always the fun of the start. So we'll see what crazy upsets we're talking about next week.
And then kind of some rivalry games to hit on. Just, classic Big 12, Texas Tech and Texas. That's always a very fun game. Regardless of how good those two are, that one's always up there. SMU, TCU, the battle for the Iron Skillet, the battle of DFW, really. Always a fun one to see. And then trying to find the other one here. Yes, here it is. I want to see how UCLA respond. Now, you're not going to find this game. This is a Pac-12 network, but going to Stanford, who's looked pretty good with a new quarterback in with Tanner McKee. I wonder how the Cardinal will do against another ranked team, but this time at home in Stanford Stadium.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Chip Kelly, how well Chip Kelly has UCLA ready. They definitely need to come back off that tough loss to Fresno State and go out and get a win. So, very important game here for UCLA, especially as Pac-12 play opens up.
And that will wrap up our college football portion of the show. But we're not done yet. We still... Oh, okay. Never mind. I guess we do actually have to go. I thought we were going to have a little bit of NFL talk, but that is A-okay. Andrew's got to go. That is perfectly fine. I might give a little talk just to kind of see what's going on here. But thank you, Andrew, for being on the show, as always. And, just have a good rest of the day.
No, thanks for having me again. Always look forward to doing this and excited to recap next week and have Coach Walter on again. So, very looking forward to next week.
All righty. Thank you. But just kind of jumping into the NFL here, just a little quick rundown. Some of these games. One game that, I did not think was going to be as good as it was, but talking about Thursday night football, the Giants taking on the football team. This is a back-and-forth affair. Taylor Heineke playing a very good game, throwing for 336. And the football team getting a pretty good win, 30-29 over the Giants. Another kind of interesting one that I didn't expect to happen was the Bears getting to see Justin Fields playing, splitting time with Andy Dalton. And, the Bears had this thing on lock against Cincinnati, but the Bengals crawling back into the game. Joe Burrow refusing to go away. Cincinnati not getting the win, however. But, there's still pretty good signs of improvement for the Bengals. But another one here, Houston at Cleveland. The Browns doing exactly what the Browns were going to do. Cleveland getting a 31-21 win there. Baker Mayfield throwing for 213. Nick Chubb with 95 rushing yards on the day. Mayfield did get a little dinged up during it, but he still looked fine from, I believe, everything I saw today. And then the next game up here, another very good one. The Rams, L.A., going to Indianapolis. Matt Stafford just still looking pretty good as a Ram. Yes, it's only been 2 games, but the Rams doing everything they had to do to get this one done. A 27-24 win in Indy. Now, Buffalo and Miami, this one was not at all what anyone expected, mainly due to the injury of Tua Tagovailoa and Jacoby Brissett having to come in for the Dolphins. But Buffalo's defense still looked very elite. They did exactly what they were supposed to do, getting a 35-0 shutout win over the Dolphins. Then the next game here, New England taking on the New York Jets. And Zach Wilson, he's still going through growing pains. That's going to happen when you're a very young quarterback. New England getting a 25-6 win. This was kind of something that most people expected would happen. But one game that a lot of people did not expect to see was San Francisco and Philadelphia. a very defensive game. San Francisco and Philadelphia both coming off pretty big offensive games against Detroit and against Atlanta, respectively. But this was a really weird defensive game. Jalen Hurts doing a lot for the Eagles, but just not enough to overcome the Niners, as the Niners getting a 17-11 win. How often do you see 11 points get scored in a game? It feels like that's becoming more common, but still a very fun number to see. But speaking of other fun numbers, 26 is the number that the Raiders put on the Steelers, getting a 26-17 win over Pittsburgh. And, Derek Carr. What can you say about Derek Carr? He's a guy that's just always kind of there. He's not really elite. He's not one of the more marketable superstars of the league, but he always keeps Vegas around, and they're proving that once again. They're 2-0. And then New Orleans going to Carolina. How about this? Carolina gets a 26-7 win over the Saints, and Jameis Winston, all the talk about, he's looked a lot better, throwing for 5 touchdowns against the Packers. Hey, what's going to happen here? Well, it's typical Jameis Winston showed up. Threw a couple of interceptions, did not look as good. It seems that kind of inconsistency we're used to seeing from him was back. And Sam Darnold looking impressive. He's impressed me so far. Going for 305. I'm not a big Sam Darnold person. I didn't think Carolina would be that good this year. But if you would have told me they would not only beat New Orleans, but to blow them out, I would not have believed that. The next game we've got up here, Denver and Jacksonville. This one kind of went about how I expected. Jacksonville and Denver, both not very good teams this year, but Teddy Bridgewater doing everything he needed to do for the Broncos. They get a pretty good win, 23-13 there. But then another really fun game that a lot of people saw. Kyler Murray throwing for 400 yards, getting a huge comeback win over the Vikings. Arizona taking it 34-33. This was just a fantastic game to watch. This is just one of those games that you got to stop what you're doing. You got to watch it. Arizona, Minnesota going back and forth the entire game. Minnesota gets up by a couple scores. Arizona responds. That's just perfect football right there. This was really, I think, not the game of the week. We're getting to that one. But it was a very fun one to watch. Now, this one not as fun to watch, and especially never fun to watch if you're a Falcons fan. But Tampa Bay just looking so impressive once again. Just rolling over Atlanta 48-25. The Buccaneers look exactly like they did last year. They picked up right where they left off, just continuing with a dominant win over Atlanta. But another pretty good game to see was a Dallas traveling to LA to play the Chargers. Chargers put up a good fight, and this was a game where Dallas's defense showed up, made the Chargers make a few mistakes, a few errors. This is one of those games I did not expect to see go this way. I thought the Chargers would pull it off, but Dallas getting a very impressive 20-17 win in a game I thought would be a bit more higher scoring, but it didn't seem to happen there. But a really good game that a lot of people, if you haven't watched it, go watch the highlights of it. You probably have by now. Tennessee going to Seattle, and the Titans pulling off an amazing comeback to get a 33-30 win in overtime. The Titans looked like the Titans we expected to see. Ryan Tannehill throws for 347. Derrick Henry runs for 182. Just how good is Derrick Henry? When he's on, he is on, and he was most definitely on against that Seahawk defense. With Sunday Night Football, once again, always kind of the king. Usually you kind of expect that as the big game. It's kind of the king game, I guess you could say, in that it's the royalty. Everyone looks up to it. You want to be on Sunday night. And the two teams we had did not disappoint. Baltimore, somehow, they found a way. This is a game that Every time I checked on it, it seemed like they were just digging themselves into a hole. They get down 2 scores to Kansas City, which is never an easy hole to climb out of, but they're able to come back, rally, and get a 36-35 stunner over the Chiefs. And then, of course, Monday night game just got underway a few minutes ago. Detroit at Green Bay. I think this will be a pretty entertaining game. I mean, Detroit and Green Bay both off to not the start you want to the year. Green Bay getting absolutely decimated by the Saints. And for Detroit, you had a few moments of excellence against the Niners. You had that rally going for you at the end. But I think at Lambeau, I am going to pick the Packers to win this one. And I encourage you, if you're listening, turn that one on. It's on ESPN right now. And I think that is going to wrap it up. So with Andrew Santangelo not here, but we once again always thank him for being on, I'm Cade Kennedy saying have a great night, everybody.